Hey everybody, welcome to Fauxropter. In front of me, I have one man named
John Dutton.
And then sitting in my place is me, Bobby Gaucher.
No.
It's okay, you can introduce me anytime you'd like.
Okay. So Bobby, we have a word today that was completely unplanned as of like yesterday morning.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very excited to see where this is going to go.
So follow us while we do the word
Timeline.
Okay, so how did timeline come about?
We were out with a couple of friends, and I'm actually not sure where it originated, because the idea was, what if, this is a sad subject, okay, but it's going to kind of get fun.
I promise.
Okay, so John Lennon was shot and killed in 1980. When I was 14 years old, it was a horrible tragedy culturally, personally, for him and his family, obviously, and me being in England at the time. It was just like, it's just really, really sad, you know.
Mm-hmm. Especially because there was kind of a hypothesis that the Beatles would eventually get back together.
I spent my entire childhood, if you'd have asked me pretty much any day during my entire childhood from, say, 4 to 14, what would be the thing you would want most in the world to happen, I would have said that the Beatles would get back together. And I'm not joking. I can't think of something I would have said apart from that.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly it was dead. There was no chance.
Just quick sidebar, I think from 4 to 14, I would have said for NSYNC to get back together, but carry on.
Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Did one of them get assassinated?
No.
Oh, that's a shame. I mean, did they eventually get back together?
No.
Oh, so you still have hope.
Yeah.
Okay. Keep the faith. So within, went to bed. John Lennon was alive, got up in the morning, he was dead. It was really like that in England. And so, he was coming out of the big building where he lived next to Central Park with his wife Yoko Ono, and a crazed fan came up and shot him, right? Mm-hmm. That was it. It was done. So the thing that came up in conversation somehow or other with friends was, what if Yoko Ono had thrown herself in front of the bullet? Okay.
And then that split off into, what if she lived and what if she died?
So there's a timeline that exists, which is the world we live in now, where sadly John Lennon died. That was that.
Arguably, it's the darkest timeline.
Yeah. There are two other timelines that could potentially split off where Yoko Ono was the biggest hero in the world.
Mm-hmm. Which would then conclude with women running the world.
Potentially.
Most likely.
This is the one where she dies. She takes the bullet and dies. And John Lennon is devastated. Everybody's kind of devastated. And the really big Yoko Ono fans are absolutely devastated. Mm-hmm. But everybody's also kind of relieved because they could easily imagine the current timeline that we live in now where John Lennon's dead.
Mm-hmm. And Yoko Ono becomes the most selfless person ever to have lived.
She is... like, since, I don't know, Joan of Arc or somebody like this, right?
She puts Mother Teresa to shame.
Exactly. Mother Teresa would have had to instantly retire and been like, I'm out.
Move over, Gandhi. Yeah. We got a new hero.
And all of the people who bad-mouthed Yoko Ono for years, broke up the Beatles, blah, blah, which we know now isn't true at all. Anybody who's seen that super cool Get Back documentary can just see that is absolutely not what was going on there. But all of those people would have had to instantly shut up as well, right? And that would have been that. That's that kind of incredible to imagine timeline that we thought up, right? And then after that, a day later, well, I think last night, we thought up the timeline of she throws herself in front of the bullet and doesn't die too.
And that was arguably more depressing.
Well, or interesting. So what do you find depressing about it?
Well, because the Beatles definitely would have gotten back together. They would have been like old and not great. And it would have kind of just been messy. And we would have seen them deteriorate in front of us. Very similar to the Stones. Like, I went to see a Stones concert in the last 10 years. A, Mick Jagger's still hot. B, Keith Richards is a walking zombie.
Yeah, no, I saw the Stones one time at Montreal's Olympic Stadium in, I'm going to guess, 1990, something like that. The Steel Wheels tour, so anybody can look that up. And I was far enough away so that I had to sort of look at the big screens. And I swear that on the screen, Keith Richards was ahead of the actual Keith Richards on stage in his singing and movements and everything. So, yeah, I know what you're saying. Although, I don't know. I have to kudos to the Stones for they're doing what they love. They don't need the money.
However, the Beatles are the Beatles because they didn't get a revival.
Also, the other thing that we, sadly are all aware of when we're watching the Get Back documentary is that was literally their last show of playing together in public, right? They hadn't played together since like Shea Stadium in 65 on their last actual real tour.
And it's the coolest way to have a final show.
Yes. So in this timeline, you're saying that it's not great because the Beatles get back together.
The Beatles get back together.
The one thing I wanted
John
as a kid.
Lennon, I'm going to say it, would have probably sucked the older he got.
Okay, but isn't it just different? Isn't it not necessarily sucking? It's not like he had no good songs after the Beatles or Paul McCartney or George Harrison.
I think he would have, he was a very political guy in the first place, and the 80s wouldn't have been a good time for him. I think there would have been a lot of decision making as the late 80s happened and John Lennon was still a public figure who was very outspoken.
Yeah, but maybe that would have been a good thing that we got to hear from him all the time about some of this crappy stuff that was going on socially.
What if it wasn't? What if he had bad opinions?
Oh, well, that's possible too. But that's another split in the timeline a bit.
Yeah, and then the guy who has the giant Imagine in Central Park is actually kind of a wanker in the end.
Yeah, I don't like to think about that one though.
But that's what I mean. That's the darkest timeline.
Yeah. The ironic part of this timeline is that Yoko Ono brings the Beatles back together.
And that's what makes her the true monster.
So you're not the hugest Yoko fan, is that right?
I'm kind of indifferent to Yoko Ono. I'm not a huge John Lennon fan.
Okay.
And I think the way that things went down is probably for the greater good of humanity.
Really? Wow.
I think it makes John Lennon an icon. I think it gave Paul McCartney the freedom to kind of let the Beatles
sort of rest.
Well, their legacy carry on, but be
untarnished?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find a word for you here.
That's a pretty good word because it just kind of gets to stay in this glorious place of icon.
Like frozen in time icon. Kind of thing. Right.
That concert's the last concert they ever did together. Everybody was still friends. It was very nice. You didn't have to see anybody really have any riffs.
Yeah, no rifts between them. Yeah. I mean, there were things. George was not happy because he didn't get to do all his songs and stuff. But yes, no, I agree with you. It was nothing that doesn't happen in bands all the time. You can hear in interviews with Keith Richards talking about that.
Yeah. So we get to have
for 20 years or something.
We get to have this idea that maybe in 85, maybe in 90. Like the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, right? The Beatles would have gotten back together. They would have performed. It would have been outstanding. But we never had the chance.
Mm-hmm. And also, another example is Elvis, because we both watched the Elvis movie, which I think portrays the reality, let's just say. It's fictional, but of Elvis's decline and ultimate sort of degradation and sad, very tragic end, right? Yeah, it's best to avoid that kind of thing if you can. But I don't know. I mean, maybe, but I'm not convinced that would have been the case. I mean, the Beatles could have got back together for a bit and then been like, that's it, guys, too. Or just, I don't know, it could have been still quite good.
If we would have had the opportunity, we wouldn't be talking about it. We would there's just this huge glory to not knowing what would have happened and what could have been.
Right. So this is the timeline question, right? So the other part of this timeline that is kind of fun to think about is if Yoko Ono took the bullet but didn't die, she would be very heroic, but would also be around to benefit from it, to glorify in it if she wanted to or something.
Oh, could you imagine the art piece she would have had with the bullet that they take out of her?
This is it. So there's part of this. I'm I quite like Yoko Ono and her art, but I feel like it could have got really annoying. Some people are really annoyed now, right, and always have been by her art and it could have been way worse.
Oh yeah, she would have erected statues of herself, her holding the bullet up in the air.
Yeah.
She would have toured and she would have given speeches, stadium tour speeches.
Maybe. I don't know.
The TED Talk would have been iconic.
Obviously, Yoko Ono is still alive, is out there, and hey, hello.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, Yoko.
If
we really appreciate it.
We'll add you on Twitter or something. But yeah, so timelines are interesting because they're also in the popular culture right now, or recently, because that movie that we saw with Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh,
right.
Such a good movie.
Right.
But that's about different dimensions.
Well, it's different timelines too, no?
Well, it's everything.
Because it's the same people with different timelines. Like literally, they have different realities, right?
Well, every decision you make could erupt.
Splits you. It's the sliding doors thing, right? Mm-hmm. It splits into different timelines. So Yoko Ono's decision to throw herself doing her scream, people would have thought it was a performance piece, wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, although just so everybody knows, from a quantum physics perspective, you don't get to interact with your other timelines if quantum physics is real, which it seems to be.
In our timeline, it's real.
Well, it's real. It's just that it's not like the fun thing where you might be able to see you if you'd made the other decision, like in the movie Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow,
or in the multiverse with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
That's all they do now. They all see each other and they all meet each other.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not what that means. All right. So the timeline in question was a very specific one. This wasn't really so much investigating the word timeline. It was more this very, very specific timeline. What would happen? Maybe we should do this again at some point.
With a different event.
We could have timeline 2.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be like another timeline, really, in the Fauxropter universe.
I love the Fauxropter universe. Every time we do a word, we split multiple timelines.
Exactly. All right. Please let us know what you think about this split in the timeline that we proposed today.
Let us know if you're in the darkest or the brightest timeline.
Mm-hmm. And we'll be talking to you with a new word next week. So
if you want to follow us, you can follow us on Twitter. You send us an email at fauxropter@gmail.com.
Also TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
There's clips on TikTok.
And if you want to see John do a couple TikTok dances, please let us know, because I'm sure we can arrange for that.
Well, all right. Thanks, everybody.
See you soon.
Okay, bye.